Welcome back to another Djinn diary. This is the Phobia series. Check out the playlist for other scary series and hit the likes and comment on which phobia you would like to hear next. Without further ado. Ombrophobia. The storm struck faster than anyone anticipated. 6-year-old Evelina McIntyre sat cross-legged on her bedroom carpet, nestled in the lower level of her family's Georgia home. Normally, her room, a cozy space with pastel green walls and shelves neatly lined with toys and books, was filled with warmth and comfort. Her bed, covered by a quilt embroidered with flowers, occupied a far corner, while her low dresser sat against the opposite wall. Crayon drawings of smiling animals, blue skies, and rainbows decorated the walls. But tonight, the room felt small and vulnerable as the storm gained strength outside. Rain splattered unevenly against the window, driven by gusts that made the glass shudder. Evelina's parents, Lucy and Alexei, were upstairs, their voices and the hum of the television blending with the distant rumble of thunder. Trying to ignore the storm, Evelina focused on lining up her favorite dolls on the floor. A sudden creak from the far corner startled her. She looked up, frowning. The room was softly lit by her bedside lamp, casting light on every corner, but something was amiss. A dark patch began to spread along the carpet near the window. Evelina stood, watching as water seeped in under the frame, pooling at the base of the wall and spreading across the carpet. The damp spot widened, turning the carpet a deep, murky color.
Mama! Papa!
She called, stepping back as the water crept forward.
There's water!
Her mother's faint voice drifted down from upstairs. What did you say, Evie?
There's water in my room!
Evelina shouted, her chest tightening as the puddle grew, soaking the floor and endangering her toys. Dropping to her knees, she quickly gathered her dolls, cradling as many as she could. She moved swiftly, setting them on her bed, but the water kept coming. Grabbing her favorite stuffed animals, she noticed one, a small blue rabbit with floppy ears, slip from her grasp and roll into the growing puddle. She lunged for it, but her wet sleeves made her grip slip. By the time her mother reached the doorway, the water was rising around her ankles. Lucy rushed in, immediately lifting Evelina onto the bed.
Come here, baby,
She murmured, brushing Evelina's damp hair aside.
Alexei! The water's pouring in down here!
Evelina's father appeared, his face tense with worry, moving carefully through the water-soaked carpet. It's already this bad, he muttered. We have to block it off. He hurried upstairs. Evelina clung to her mother's arm, watching the water continue to seep through the window frame. This wasn't just a leak, it was filling the room, her safe space becoming unrecognizable.
It's okay, sweetheart. Papa will fix it. Stay here on the bed, all right?
Lucy whispered while kneeling beside her. But as the minutes passed, the water steadily rose, forming a shallow pool that covered the floor and swirled around the furniture's legs. Alexei returned with towels and sheets, trying to stem the flow. He darted back and forth, grabbing anything to create a barrier, blankets, old clothes, even the curtains from the closet, but the water flowed over each attempt, spreading farther. Lucy lifted Evelina higher on the bed, her tone urgent. Stay right here, honey. Don't move. Evelina nodded, clutching her blanket tightly. She watched her parents fight against the water, each step slow as it soaked through their shoes. The entire lower level was at risk. Lucy and Alexei exchanged worried looks, their voices hurried. Then Lucy's gaze shifted to the far corner, her face suddenly pale.
Oh, God, Petey!
She gasped, her voice breaking.
Alexei, the rabbit!
Evelina's heart clenched. She turned, staring at the corner where Petey's cage stood. In the chaos, she had forgotten about him. His cage was half submerged, the water nearly reaching the middle. The metal bars rattled as water surged against them.
No!
Evelina cried, trying to leap forward, but Lucy held her back.
Stay here!
Lucy commanded firmly, pushing Evelina onto the bed.
Don't move!
Alexei splashed to the cage, his face tense with fear. He fumbled with the latch, but the water was already too high. Petey lay motionless at the cage's bottom, his tiny form still. The damage was done. 10 years had passed since the storm that changed Evelina's life. Now, at 16, she was taller and stronger, yet the fear that night instilled had only grown. What began as anxiety during storms had intensified into an all-consuming fear of rain. Her parents did all they could to help, reassuring her, creating a sense of safety during storms, and enrolling her in weekly therapy sessions. The therapist, a specialist in childhood trauma, guided her through exposure therapy, relaxation techniques, and creative outlets like drawing and writing to express her emotions. The sessions provided some relief. Evelina learned breathing exercises and methods to distract herself, tools to manage her panic. But the underlying fear remained. Each time the sky darkened, each time raindrops touched her skin, that deep-seated dread returned, as if the rain carried a hidden threat meant only for her. Progress felt fleeting, as helplessness always found a way back. Her parents continued to be supportive, placing umbrellas in every room, offering to pick her up on rainy days, and adjusting family outings to avoid storms. But deep down, both she and her parents knew the fear had become part of her life. 8 years later, autumn arrived, bringing shorter days and gray skies. After the school bell rang, students poured out of classrooms, filling the hallways with chatter and laughter. Evelina joined the crowd outside, where some students lingered, while others called for rides. She remained quiet, her gaze fixed on the sky. Dark clouds loomed, thick and damp with a metallic scent that sent chills down her spine. She knew what it meant, rain was coming. Her pulse quickened as she took a steadying breath. It was just rain, she reminded herself, mere drops from the sky. But her heart disagreed, racing faster with each thought. Hurrying through the crowd, Evelina took the sidewalk toward home, a 10-minute walk that she could shorten if she took the back roads. She convinced herself she could make it if she moved quickly. A fat raindrop hit her shoulder, soaking her sweater instantly. Evelina flinched, glancing up as more drops fell, forming tiny circles on the pavement. She felt her chest tighten and pulled up her hood, quickening her steps. The rain grew steadier, and she ducked her head, breaking into a jog. The streets were empty, her classmates' laughter long gone. Evelina's shoes slapped the wet pavement, spraying water with each step as her clothes grew heavy and clung to her skin. Then, she slipped. She gasped, arms flailing to steady herself as her phone slipped from her pocket, landing with a crack and sliding along the slick sidewalk toward the curb.
No!
Evelina cried, lunging to grab it. Her fingers grazed the wet concrete as the phone tumbled into the street, finally slipping down a sewer grate. Dropping to her knees, she peered into the darkness, her fingers clutching the cold metal grate.
No, no, no!
She whispered. She squinted, peering down into the darkness, but only water rushed below, carrying leaves and debris. There was no sign of her phone. Then something shifted in the shadows. Evelina froze, breath catching as she leaned closer. A faint shape moved below, more of an outline than anything solid. She swallowed hard. A splash echoed, and her phone appeared, tossed back through the grate, landing in a puddle beside her. Stunned, Evelina blinked, then hesitantly reached out. It was her phone, wet but undamaged, save for a few scratches. She looked back into the grate, heart racing. The shadows had vanished.
Hello?
She whispered, voice trembling. Only the sound of water filled the silence. As rain poured harder, she stood, clutching her phone. Taking a step back, she finally turned and ran. With each step, a heavy splash followed. She glanced over her shoulder, but no one was there. Then she saw them, large, irregular footprints splashing one by one in the puddles behind her, as though something massive was following. Evelina ran faster, gasping as her house came into view. She stumbled onto the porch, fumbling with her keys before bursting inside, slamming the door behind her. Panting, she peered out the window. Through the rain, she saw the street light glimmering on the empty street. The footprints stopped at the steps, filling with water and blending into the surroundings. Backing away, she shivered in the quiet of the dark house, confusion seeping into her fear. Had she really seen those prints? Or had her mind played tricks on her? That night, she lay awake, the rain pounding against the window. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the rain and the footprints, huge, looming, and always just a step behind. She finally drifted into restless sleep, haunted by visions of rain pouring endlessly, her world submerged, and something watching, hidden in the downpour, its eyes faintly gleaming. After several weeks, Evelina's unease persisted, with memories of those footprints forming behind her and the rain haunting her. Even when the skies were clear, she felt watched, as if something was waiting for the right moment to reappear. She avoided going out when rain threatened, rushing home to lock herself inside whenever the sky darkened. But her sense of safety at home began to fade. One quiet evening, the distant hum of traffic drifted through the cracked bathroom window. Evelina stood before the mirror, examining her reflection, trying to force a smile. Showering made her uneasy after everything that had happened, but she continued the routine. She turned away, shivering as a cool breeze blew through the open window. The skies had been darkening all day, and now rain began to patter against the glass. Evelina froze, listening. The sounds of dripping water filled the bathroom, yet the rain tapping on the glass worried her most. Her heart quickened as the rain intensified into a downpour. She moved to close the window, but hesitated when something outside caught her eye. The dark street below, lit by passing headlights, was pooled with water. Just for a second, she thought she saw a tall, distorted shape standing at the corner, unmoving in the rain. She slammed the window shut, locking it tight as the shape disappeared into the darkness. She stared into the downpour, but there was nothing now, just a late autumn shower drenching the empty street. Evelina took a deep breath, forcing herself to look away. It was only her imagination, she thought. She'd been on edge since she'd seen the footprints. The very thought was absurd, such things didn't exist. Yet her anxiety remained. Trembling, she undressed and stepped into the spacious shower, casting one last glance at the rain before turning on the water. Warm water drummed against her shoulders, sending steam swirling around her. She closed her eyes, tilting her head back as warmth eased her tension. The soft hiss of the shower filled the space, drowning out the storm outside. For a few minutes, she almost felt normal. Then, through the haze of the shower spray, she noticed something strange. At the edge of her vision, water seemed to strike something solid, something that shouldn't have been there. The droplets scattered, outlining a tall figure standing against the far wall of the shower. Evelina's breath caught, her eyes widening. The shape didn't move, the spray hitting it and bouncing off, revealing the form nearly as tall as the stall. It wasn't human. The proportions were wrong, too slender, too elongated, with a head slightly bent and shoulders hunched forward, as if leaning toward her. Evelina stared, frozen, struggling to process what she was seeing. Then the figure shifted. She stumbled back, slipping on the wet tiles, catching herself on the wall as a long, gangly arm unfolded from the shape, reaching slowly, almost curiously, toward her. Pressed against the wall, Evelina trembled, her eyes fixed on the reaching arm. Water ran along its length, outlining every unnatural curve. It stopped inches from her face, droplets sliding down in a steady rhythm. Evelina didn't move, barely daring to breathe. Slowly, she lifted her hand, reaching toward the figure. Her fingers brushed its surface, and she recoiled instantly, jerking back as if burned. It was cold, unnaturally cold, like the touch of something lifeless. Its surface was wet, almost rubbery, and left a strange, oily texture on her skin. Evelina stared at her fingers. The figure didn't react, remaining still, its arm extended, its head tilted slightly as if observing her. She needed to escape. Evelina pushed off the wall, slipping past the figure, grabbing a towel as she bolted from the shower. She didn't look back, not wanting to see it follow her. She flung open the bathroom door and ran down the hallway, water dripping from her hair onto the carpet. The house was dark, shadows pooling in every corner. Evelina rushed into her bedroom, slamming the door shut and pressing her back against it, trembling. With only the faint sound of rain against the windows, everything was still. It was gone, or so it seemed. The figure hadn't pursued her. She was alone. Yet the fear lingered. She had felt it. It had been with her in the shower, inches away, as if waiting to be noticed. Had it been there the whole time? Exhausted, Evelina sank to the floor, hugging her knees to her chest, shivering. She'd spent years managing her fears, but this was beyond her experience. The rain might have been harmless, but this was different. It wasn't in her mind. It was real, and it was here. Inside her home. 2 weeks had passed since the creature invaded her home, attacking her in the shower. Days of fear, tension, and constant vigilance followed. Evelina told no one, not her parents, not her therapist. They wouldn't believe her, or worse, think she was lying. Some days, she nearly convinced herself it was all a hallucination. After all, it only happened when she was wet, when rain hammered down, making everything feel surreal. But she knew the truth. The creature was real and lurking beyond her walls. Since that night, she took extreme precautions. She kept the bathroom window locked, even during the hottest days, and avoided full showers, opting instead for a quick wash with a damp cloth, her movements nervous and brief. After every wash, she scanned the bathroom, eyes flitting to the corners, searching for any hint of movement. Each night, she checked every window and door, ensuring they were locked tight, even when rain wasn't in the forecast. Towels lined the windowsills in case a stray drop slipped through. Every morning, before her parents awoke, she'd inspect the house, room by room, looking for anything out of place, a misplaced puddle, a damp mark on the carpet, a stain on the curtains. Her parents noticed the change, tried talking to her, asking if something was wrong. Each time, Evelina forced a smile, shrugging off their concern. She couldn't worry them with the truth. Admitting it would only make them panic or, worse, scrutinize her even more closely. She couldn't risk it. So she stayed silent. And the fear festered. 2 weeks passed. Evelina, startled at every shadow, sat up late at night staring out the window, ears straining for the sound of rain. She knew it was out there, waiting for the right moment to strike again. The pressure in her chest built, making it hard to breathe. She had to act. She needed to prove, to herself, if no one else, that she wasn't losing her mind. The forecast predicted light rain that evening. No storms, no downpours, nothing to draw the creature. She could face it. As the first fine drops began to fall, Evelina stood by the back door, peering into the yard. Her heart hammered, palms damp despite the chill. She had to do this. It was just rain. She squared her shoulders, took a deep breath, and opened the door. The rain barely fell, a soft mist settling on her skin and hair. She hesitated, tense, then forced herself outside. Cold grass squelched under her bare feet, but she moved farther into the yard, letting the drizzle soak through her clothes. Nothing happened. She stood still, arms wrapped around herself, eyes closed. "It's fine," she told herself. "There's nothing here." She exhaled and looked around. The yard was empty. No shadows, no movement. Just the rain, falling gently. Evelina took another step, breathing more easily. Maybe it was all in her head. Maybe she'd let fear get the better of her. Maybe. Her foot struck something solid, sending her stumbling forward. She gasped, catching herself on her hands. Wincing, she looked down, and froze. Half hidden in the wet grass was a large, pale shape. Her heart pounded as she blinked at it. It was smooth and round, its surface slick with rain. At first, she thought it was just a rock or a lost ball, but then she saw something move inside, a dark, writhing shape pressing against a thin, translucent membrane. An egg. She scrambled back, scanning the yard. More eggs were scattered across the lawn like ghostly lanterns. They glowed faintly in the rain, their pale surfaces throbbing softly with a strange light, visible only as rain slid over their thin, membranous shells. The creature had laid its eggs here. The realization hit her hard. It was nesting, preparing for something. Dozens of eggs clustered by the tree, the fence, even near the porch. Hidden, waiting for rain to reveal them. She recoiled, horrified. This couldn't be happening. But then the fear ignited into something else, anger. She wasn't going to let it invade her home. Trembling, she grabbed an old shovel from the porch. Her grip tightened. With a fierce cry, she swung the shovel down. The first egg burst, spraying dark liquid. The tiny creature inside twitched, then went still. Evelina swung again, her fury growing with each blow. She smashed egg after egg, feeling a grim satisfaction with every splatter. Just as she struck the last cluster, a piercing shriek filled the air, echoing through the rain. She froze, the shovel slipping from her hands. The rain poured harder, thickening into a torrent. Slowly, she turned, her resolve dissolving. At the far end of the yard, half hidden in shadow, stood the creature. Larger than before, its limbs twisted and elongated, head hunched low. Rain ran down its grotesque form. Its eyes, two pinpoints of pale light, burned through the darkness. She didn't think. She ran. The creature's roar filled the night as it charged forward, crashing through the yard. Evelina stumbled up the porch steps, the creature close behind. She lunged through the door, slamming it shut just as it crashed against the wood, rattling the walls. Panting, she backed away, her entire body shaking. It roared again, its claws scraping the doorframe. But it couldn't enter. Evelina watched as it flickered and wavered in the rain, its furious eyes locked on her. It clawed at the door, shoulders hunched. But it couldn't cross the threshold. She sank to the floor, hands trembling, heart racing. With a final, enraged shriek, the creature grudgingly retreated. It would come again, she knew. It wouldn't stop until it got what it wanted. But tonight, at least, she was safe. The days following the confrontation were bright and sunny, with skies a clear, unwavering blue. Each morning, Evelina felt a little lighter when she stepped outside and felt the warmth of the sun on her face. Slowly, the fear that had tightly gripped her began to loosen. Still, she sensed it wouldn't last, it never did. Sooner or later, the rain would return, and with it, everything else. A week passed. The weather reports remained blissfully clear of rain, allowing Evelina a faint glimmer of hope. She hadn't told anyone about the eggs or the creature, there seemed no point. The evidence had vanished with the sunshine, no broken shells, no dark stains. It was as if the storm had washed away all but her memories. She knew what others would think, that she was crazy. And maybe she was. She couldn't explain any of it, not to herself, her parents, or anyone else. So, she stayed quiet, letting it gnaw at her, lying awake each night waiting for the rain. Then, one evening as she headed home, the dreaded moment arrived. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and the air thickened with the scent of rain. Weather reports warned of severe thunderstorms, urging residents to stay indoors. Evelina's anxiety surged. It was coming. And this time, it felt worse. She hurried home, every nerve on edge, her fingers trembling as she fumbled with her keys. Raindrops started falling just as she stepped inside. Her parents glanced up from the kitchen table, concern etched on their faces.
Sweetheart,
Her mother said softly, standing up.
the storm's going to hit hard. We thought we'd all stay in tonight, maybe watch a movie together.
Evelina forced a tight smile. Her parents had long been trying to make her feel safe from her fear of rain. They didn't understand it, but they tried. After her panic attack 2 weeks ago, they'd been even more accommodating, offering to stay nearby whenever she took a shower. Their presence, though silent, made her feel a bit better. She checked the windows, ensuring they were shut tight with no gaps for the rain. Her mother smiled gently.
Don't worry. Everything's locked up. You're safe.
The reassurance felt hollow. Evelina nodded, trying to keep calm.
Yeah, I know. I think I'll take a quick shower before the storm hits, if that's okay.
Her father glanced at the darkening sky.
Now? Are you sure?
It's fine.
She said quickly.
It'll just be a few minutes. I'll leave the door unlocked so you can check on me if you want.
Her parents exchanged a look but nodded. Her mother brushed a strand of hair back, whispering,
If you need anything, we're right here. We won't go anywhere.
Her chest eased, just a little. She managed a grateful smile.
Okay. Thanks, Mom.
The rain's patter intensified as she made her way to the bathroom. She paused, taking a deep breath. It was just a shower. She'd been fine before, hadn't she? But it hadn't rained then. She shook her head, pushing the thought away. She had checked the windows and doors. She was safe. There were rules that protected her. Turning on the shower, she adjusted the temperature until steam began to rise. She stepped in, letting the hot water cascade over her, feeling the familiar comfort as it eased her tension. She could hear her parents' voices, a comforting murmur outside. Then the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Her eyes snapped open. She turned to the bathroom window, where rain trickled down the glass. It was just rain. Just a storm. She forced herself to look away, reaching for shampoo, trying to ignore the cold prickle of unease. But then, an icy droplet slid down her cheek. Her hand froze. The water from the shower was still hot, yet that drop, it felt like rainwater. Heart pounding, she turned back to the window. The glass was dark and slick. Then, at the very edge, something moved. A thin stream of water slid down the frame, pooling at the base. Her blood ran cold. Before she could react, the window shattered. Glass exploded inward, sending shards across the bathroom. Evelina screamed, stumbling back and slipping on the wet tiles. She fell to the floor, her arms flailing. Through the broken window loomed the creature, half hidden by the rain. Water ran down its limbs, pooling beneath it as it clawed at the walls, leaving splintering gouges. She scrambled backward, eyes wide with terror. She tried to scream again, but her voice stuck. It lunged forward, wrapping its long arms around her waist, its touch icy and lifeless. She kicked out, but it held her tight, yanking her onto the cold, wet floor. Rain poured in, mingling with the shower water.
Let me go!
She shrieked, struggling, but it only tightened its grip, pulling her closer to the shattered window. Outside, lightning flashed wildly. Evelina gasped as the creature yanked her through the opening, its claws digging in. Each drop of rain felt like a needle against her skin. She thrashed, kicking at the ground, but the creature was too strong. It lifted her, claws shifting to close around her throat. Her vision blurred as pain seared through her body. She could feel its icy skin against her neck, pulsing against her flesh. She kicked, trying to break free.
Evelina!
Her father's voice rang out, high and desperate. Evelina blinked, gasping as she looked toward her parents at the yard's edge, horror etched on their faces. Evelina, I'm coming. Alexei roared, gripping a shovel tightly. He swung, but the blade sliced through the creature's form as if it were smoke, scattering rain droplets. Lucy screamed, tears streaming down her face. The creature's claws tightened around Evelina's neck, stars bursting in her vision. She saw her mother, her face twisted with fear. Her father's swings were useless. It was going to kill her. Suddenly, her mother lunged forward, grabbing her arm. Lucy cried, pulling with all her strength.
You're not taking her!
The creature hissed, but Lucy held on, refusing to let go. Her father grabbed Evelina's other arm, pulling with all his strength. For a moment, Evelina's body was stretched between them. Pain shot through her shoulders. But then, with a final tug, they pulled her free. She collapsed onto the wet grass, gasping. The creature reared back, its form flickering in the rain. Then it lunged, claws outstretched.
Get inside!
Alexei shouted, dragging Evelina toward the porch. They stumbled up the steps, Evelina half-carried. The creature followed, scratching deep into the wood. But it couldn't cross the threshold. Evelina called.
Hurry! It can't hurt me when I'm dry.
Her mother wrapped her in a towel, frantically drying her skin. The creature howled but couldn't enter the dry air inside. Evelina watched, trembling, as it pulled back. Shivering, Evelina clung to the towel, her mother holding her close. Outside, the creature paced along the edge, eyes fixed on her. The storm raged, but the creature stayed outside. Subscribe.